Hello, I'm the Nostalgia Critic guy, remember? So you don't have to. They're easy to admire and easy to make fun of. Let's talk about method actors. One of two scenarios usually pops in a person's head when method acting is heard. A groundbreaking genius who artfully sacrificed so much for their art? Or a pretentious narcissist trying to get even more attention due to their insecurities?
I'm a dude playing a dude disguised as another dude.
What? There's so many articles and videos about actors who have lost themselves in a performance and did crazy things torturing themselves and even others to get the best performance possible. And I'm here to ask, is it really goddamn worth it? Let's back up and clarify exactly what method acting is. It's said to be a technique of acting in which an actor aspires to complete emotional identification with the part. That is to say, in order to give the most authentic performance, an actor will partake in psychological and/or physical exercises to be more convincing. Doesn't sound too bad, but Hollywood has a unique way of going batshit insane. So often we hear of actors making everybody's life a living hell just for a role. Whether it's having everybody address them by their character name, being emotionally abusive to co-stars, or stopping the production because it's what their character would do. And let's be honest, it's usually allowed because the method actor is a big star. If a newcomer tried half the things that Marlon Brando, Dustin Hoffman, or Jared Leto tried, they'd be fired on day one. But because these were big celebrities with big draws, they were seemingly allowed to do whatever they wanted on set, no matter how much it interfered with the production. These make for great stories and great clickbait, but doesn't make for great acting. Well, maybe the first question to be answered is, why would anyone method act to begin with? It seems like such an obvious ploy for actors to get attention, and it just seems to slow things down and stress out an already stressed out crew. Well, for these over-the-top stories, sure, but there's several times that actors have used method acting techniques that seem perfectly reasonable. Remember in The Simpsons when Marge was going to play Blanche in a musical version of Streetcar Named Desire?
Yeah, you are, Homer.
Why are you talking like that?
The place tomorrow night. I've got to stay in character.
This is technically a form of method acting, but nobody sees her as crazy for it. She's doing it so she can get the accent down, as it's a voice she's not used to having, and it might be distracting if her usual accent shines through. It makes sense, and it sucks the people around her into it as well.
Hey, Mom, would it help if I talk like this too? If not...
On the set of The Iron Lady, Meryl Streep announced, as Margaret Thatcher, that she was going to continue to do her British accent off set, because if she didn't, she'd lose the voice, and she's not skilled enough to turn it off and on so easily. The crew laughed and understood. If anything, she was making it clear she wasn't going to be the headache that many other method actors could be. Comedy, surprisingly, is a treasure trove of physical method acting. John Cleese on Fawlty Towers would talk about how the audience wouldn't give as big a laugh if the violence didn't look painful, and admitted that he and some of the other actors suffered some scrapes and bruises even though they technically could have just done it lighter. The Three Stooges had to be sent to the hospital several times so that the pain in the scene looked the most convincing and got the biggest laugh. But more often than not, it's less for laughs and more for authenticity. Surely the actors in Saving Private Ryan could have just been told how to carry guns, salute, and so forth, but they all went to boot camp because they knew many people would be able to tell if something was off. It's not like a space movie where only a handful have been astronauts. There's a lot of people who have served in the military, and plenty more related to them. So in a film like this, trying to be as realistic as possible, it makes sense to have all the movements, commands, and lingo embedded into your memory. Even crying for a lot of people is a form of method acting. Yeah, you can do eye drops, but most of us can tell when fake tears are being produced and when real tears are being produced. Some people can turn it off and on like a faucet, but others, understandably, have to think of something that left an emotional impact on them to produce the tears. Trying to manipulate your emotions for a role, many say, is at the heart of method acting, and that's precisely what this is. Though again, it's not really met with any disapproving thoughts. A lot of times, method acting seems to work best when it's done for practical reasons. Robert De Niro is one of the most famous method actors, turning in great performances while mostly keeping to himself, yet staying in character as well. One of the smaller but still interesting instances is on the movie Brazil, when he had to be an illegal heating engineer. It's a long story. He would stay in costume and carry around his tools wherever he went, even if the camera wasn't on. At first, director Terry Gilliam didn't understand, but then he tried on the outfit and discovered how the many layers made it incredibly difficult to move smoothly in. He didn't realize, since De Niro's character was supposed to be sneaky and fast, it made sense to become comfortable with the suit and tools. And look at him, he moves comfortably like he's been doing it for years. You never assume any of that was a pain to work with. Hilary Swank, in her breakout role, Boys Don't Cry, knew she had to be convincing as a boy as the people in the movie were supposed to believe she was one. So she spent a month walking around in public pretending to be male. And when someone didn't believe it, she would take notes and try to figure out what to fix. She did it so well that when people would play her on TV, it was usually a guy in the role. A strange compliment to say the least. And of course, arguably, the most famous currently working is Daniel Day-Lewis. In terms of modern day method acting, this is usually the guy people point to as the crowning achievement, getting tons of praise as seemingly a completely different person every time he's on screen. None of these characters seem to have anything in common. You know, apart from screaming. God is dead!
They got alone!
I've abandoned my child! Lots of screaming.
No more decay!
Because it is my name!
Hence the nickname Danielle Day-Lewis. With performances this big and yelly, it'd be easy to throw him in the same camp of people method acting just for attention. But the more I looked into this guy, the more his reasons did mostly make sense. In My Left Foot, he stayed in a wheelchair and had people carry him around. That sounds douchey, but because he could walk fine and didn't know how a person with cerebral palsy would move or act, it does kinda add up why he would do this for a performance. He isn't just paralyzed for a few scenes, it's the entire movie, and it's based on a real guy. So it makes sense to represent a drastically different way of living and moving that you're not familiar with as best as possible. In films like The Crucible and Last of the Mohicans, he tried living months like his characters would in that time period, which does seem like a little much, but it appears he's doing it on his own and is to be as authentic as possible. The way he moves and acts feels like a guy who lives in that time period. Even on Lincoln, I always thought it was lame that he told everyone to address him as Mr. President. But Lincoln was supposed to be a humble person, and getting used to that authority and how to react to it, I can sort of understand. But what I find the most interesting about him is when he was asked why he does method acting. His answer was, what would drain me much more, in my case, is jumping in and out of character. I weirdly respect that because honestly, he's kind of admitting that he's doing it because it's easier. If he was doing it for the attention, he would say how hard and difficult it is, but he says the other way just takes a lot more out of it. There are some actors that can go in and out of character in a millisecond, he's just not one of them, and clearly wants to give the best performance he can. It's odd, but there is a level of relatability I think a lot of people can sympathize with. But to the ethical people, what about the assholes? The ones we absolutely love to mock and satirize. We'll talk about them right after I get into character. You're a dick. You're a dick. You're a dick. So now it's the part of the video that, let's be honest, is the reason you clicked on it. The douchebag method actors. These, in my opinion, are when actors seem to be using method acting more for attention than practicality. Notably the most infamous in that he was the most famous star in the world, and for the most part turned in some damn great performances, was Marlon Brando. In The Godfather, he believed in the spontaneity of the performance, so he would have his lines hidden on set so that he could read them, sometimes even on people's faces. On the set of The Score, director Frank Oz reminded Brando too much of Miss Piggy, one of the characters he played, which threw off his performance. So throughout the entire film, Oz had to give him direction from another room, not even able to look at him face to face. In Apocalypse Now, he put on a ton of weight, which the character was not described as being heavy, improvised most of his lines, and would just walk off when he felt his character was done, even though there was an entire crew ready to shoot more.
I can't think of any more dialogue to say.
People are still split whether this is a masterpiece or a failed experiment, and a lot of that is on Brando, who was built up for 2/3 of the film. Some say he delivered, others say the horror. But to Brando's credit, he has turned in groundbreaking performances that arguably changed the art of movie acting. Others, though...
You helped me by erasing my mind.
Yeah, Jared Leto is quickly going down as one of the worst Jokers ever filmed, and you can't deny part of that is from the stories about his behavior on set. Not only did he stay in character verbally abusing his co-stars, but he also mailed dead rats and even used condoms to them because art.
What a dick.
The funny thing is, 2 other actors would play the Joker, got Academy Awards, and they used method acting. But they were using it for themselves. They weren't bringing others into their homework, they were doing it on their own, like they should have been. Heath Ledger said he locked himself in a room and trying to figure out the right voice, knowing his performance had to be different from the others and match the even darker tone of an already dark character. The result was a terrifying performance nobody thought could be topped. That is, until Joaquin Phoenix, who, while difficult in interviews,
Such a heartwarmer. I cried 3 times.
I don't believe you've ever cried in your life.
What did you learn about yourself and your voice? And
Absolutely nothing.
what do you hope that people glean from it when they walk out of the cinema?
We're not.
see Brother Bear, seemed to keep his method acting on the page, literally. The director gave him the Joker's journal so he could write some crazy stuff in his handwriting for when he had to be shown writing in it. But, still not having the character down, Phoenix kept writing and writing, practicing his laugh until something finally felt unique, matching the script, but also giving a different performance from the other Jokers that had been done before. Again, while odd, both his and Ledger's approaches seemed to make sense in creating a character and bringing it to the big screen. Leto seemed like he just wanted people to say, "Wow, you became an asshole for a role." How brave. He thrusted his method on everyone else seemingly for no reason, as the role wasn't even that good. While many performers have either put on weight or lost weight for a role to look more the part, some changed their diets in a way that clearly wouldn't affect their performance. Ashton Kutcher said he went on an all-fruit diet for the movie Jobs because he heard that's what Steve Jobs did. The diet put Kutcher in the hospital for 2 days before shooting. But even if it didn't, what was that supposed to do? Losing or gaining weight, you can visibly tell the difference, but who the hell knows you're eating nothing but fruit? That kind of sacrifice doesn't make sense to me. Now let's talk about the actor I both love and kind of hate to discuss, Jim Carrey. I love to discuss him because he's one of my childhood heroes. I argue that he changed a whole generation's look at comedy, and maybe in the future I'll do a video just on that. But despite him being what looks like a really nice guy, he is one of the prime examples of method acting for what looks like no practical reason, causing far more trouble than what it's worth. I, as well as several others, have talked about the insufferable way he acted on Man on the Moon, holding up production, making people uncomfortable, getting in fights, destroying property, all because Andy Kaufman possessed Jim and was trolling the production. Yeah, on the one hand, I'm a fan of good trolling like a lot of people are, but part of the fun of trolling, including Kaufman's, is that it was done for the sake of the joke. Kaufman would torture his audience, making them hate him, not realizing their hatred was the punchline. It was selfish, but it was pretty damn funny. Carrey gave the impression he was doing this not to make the film better or to troll people, but so that he can be seen as one of those mad geniuses parading his insecurities so people can see him as deep and or troubled.
I didn't know what was real and not real.
I'm not angry because I want to try to not give you support.
Too late! Too late!
Terrible.
I totally believe that he believes he's going through a spiritual experience. But where does that leave the rest of the people trying to do their job? And this isn't the only time he's done this. On Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, he apparently tried staying so much in character he would throw the tape recorder just for rehearsals.
I know.
Look at Kate Winslet's face. She's like, okay, you get something out of this. Now definitely keep in mind, for years early on, Jim Carrey was only seen as a fad. A lot of people didn't take him seriously, and Carrey clearly wanted to be taken seriously both as a comedian and as a dramatic actor. To me, it comes across that Carrey does this kind of method acting so that others can see him as a complex person. But the funny thing is, he's talented enough, I really don't think he needs to do it. I like Carrey fine, both comedically and dramatically, but more often than not, it feels like a performance. I'm not seeing a shy man who just got his heart broken, I'm seeing Jim Carrey play a shy man who just got his heart broken. That's not bad, it just doesn't seem worth all the method acting headaches. Funny enough, my favorite performances from him are the ones where he just seemed to focus on what was best for the movie. In Dumb and Dumber, he apparently really teared up when he said he was sick of his life being in a rut. He said it reminded him of his own life before all the success, and that definitely comes through.
sick and tired of having nobody.
Now, did he have to pretend to be a limo driver for weeks and weeks living in a shitty apartment to recreate that? No, it was something he understood so he could convince us very easily. I really like him in The Bad Batch where he plays a homeless man in the apocalypse. He has no lines, but you really get the idea of what this guy is about, and he plays to his strengths as a physical performer. As far as I know, he did not go homeless to play this part. And honestly, I know it's gonna sound strange, but my favorite performance of his is The Mask. Not as the crazy green guy, but as Stanley Ipkiss. Sure, he's a little odd and over the top, but I feel like I'm watching Jim Carrey at his most honest. He said he channeled his father a lot for the role and admitted he didn't want people rolling their eyes saying, "Get to the mask already." Because of this, he weirdly comes across as very genuine. I buy him as an awkward, goofy, but still lovable dork who has an over-the-top way of expressing himself. He took what he knew and created a really charming character that I 100% believe in the context of the film. Probably the best method acting I've gotten from him, and hear me out on this one, is The Grinch. Yeah, I pick on this movie a lot, and I'll admit I'm not a fan of the performance personally, but that's because I don't think anyone got what The Grinch was really about in this movie. With that said though, Jim Carrey was hired to give a Jim Carrey performance, big, loud, and silly. And he gave the crowd exactly what they wanted despite a ton working against him. This makeup looks like the worst thing anyone could be in. Covered head to toe to eyes. Carrey said though that he trained with a specialist to center himself and be calm even though he was freaking out at the uncomfortable nature of the costume. He said you could hit him with a bat and he would still be in a peaceful place ready to perform. And you know what, for what was asked of him? It really worked. Whatever you think of this role, I never thought he looked uncomfortable or in pain. He moved like any other Jim Carrey performance, which is already very physically demanding. Want proof? Watch Mike Myers in The Cat in the Hat. From shot one, he looks miserable, trying to act as best he can, but he clearly doesn't have the physical range that Carrey does. This is an example of method acting really working to Carrey's benefit, and in terms of box office and a lot of people's reactions, it paid off big time. So it seems like method acting can work to his benefit as long as he's using it to the film's benefit. But here's the thing, for every time over-the-top method acting gets a good performance, there's plenty of actors who can give a good performance without it. Earlier we talked about The Score, with the over-the-top method actor Marlon Brando, somewhere in the middle method actor Robert De Niro, and basically no method acting at all Edward Norton. At the time, method actor Sean Penn came out with a movie called I Am Sam, the obvious Oscar bait film which was later mocked in films like Tropic Thunder. As well as, let's be honest, The Score. You see, Penn would go on and on about the importance of method acting and all the preparation for getting into character when right in front of you, within a second, Edward Norton could produce the exact same thing.
Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Nick.
What?
I'm Max's guy in the customs house. We should talk.
There's a famous story about Dustin Hoffman working with Laurence Olivier. Hoffman said his character was awake for 3 days, so he stayed up for 3 days, in which Olivier replied, "Have you thought about acting, dear boy?" I guess he didn't have to verbally and physically assault Meryl Streep on Kramer vs. Kramer. Oh yeah, that's a thing. Anthony Hopkins, one of the great actors, goes on and on how much he hates actors who need to spend hours to get into character, wasting a production's time.
It's all easy. It's dead easy. All this stuff and crap that's put into acting in the mystery of it all is all rubbish.
Even in the film An Officer and a Gentleman, said to be one of the great romances. Richard Gere and Deborah Winger apparently hated each other, but they bucked up, did what the role asked for, and went on to the next job, not needing to do any acting tricks in order to fool people that their characters were in love. So okay, we've seen method acting work, we've seen it not work, we've seen it done in small doses, we've seen it done over the top. Sometimes more prep was needed, sometimes more simplicity was needed. What are we supposed to take away from this? Well, in my opinion, method acting can be effective, but it's not required. Honestly, if it was a competition between Anthony Hopkins, who doesn't use method acting, and Jared Leto, who does, I'd pick Anthony Hopkins any day. But with that said, we can't act like it hasn't given us some wonderful performances. Great skill is great skill no matter how you create it. Some people can turn great acting on and off, others need a lot of prep and research. There's no wrong way as long as the final result is something convincing. Am I against method acting in a movie? I guess not. Am I against it getting in the way of other people's work? Absolutely. To me, it's the same as showing up late on set or not knowing your lines. It's an unnecessary roadblock that slows everything down and puts people in a bad mood. So, will there still be jokes about method acting driving people crazy? As long as there's still actors that drive people crazy, sure. But will there also be great performances that come from it? I think you can definitely count on that too. After all, it is still a form of preparation. It's like if two doctors walked in performing heart surgery. One can do it with ease, but the other needs more time to prepare. Neither is wrong as long as the results are the same and nothing is harmed in the process. But if the question is when is method acting needed and when is it not, that's an answer only the performer and the audience can answer. I'm the Nostalgia Critic, and hey, next month is March. You know what that means? Spider-Man!
I hunch.